My beloved child, listen closely, because what I'm about to reveal is not just a story, it is the kind of truth that forces a person to rethink everything they thought they knew. There is a woman, and on the surface, she looks like everyone else, calm, gentle, harmless. But beneath that soft smile, she was playing a dark game, one so subtle, so carefully woven, that no one around her realized they were already trapped inside her design. And the most shocking part? Her target was not a stranger. It was someone who trusted her with their whole heart. Every step she took, every word she spoke, every sweet gesture she offered, nothing was accidental. She moved like someone who studied every emotion, every weakness, every hidden fear, and then turned it into a quiet advantage. And while everyone praised her for being kind, she was silently setting the stage for a reveal that would shake your understanding of loyalty and intentions. Because the game she played wasn't loud, wasn't violent, wasn't obvious. It was the kind of game where the victim doesn't even know they've already lost. But here's where it gets unbelievable. This woman didn't enter their life suddenly, she had been around long before the first sign of trouble. She watched from a distance, observed from the shadows, and waited for the perfect moment to become useful. She approached with perfect timing, like someone who had studied the script of their life beforehand. She knew exactly when they felt lonely. She knew the exact moment they needed a comforting voice. And she always appeared right when their guard was down. That's why nobody suspected her. She didn't break their trust, she slowly melted into it. She didn't demand attention, she allowed it to fall into her hands naturally. She didn't push her intentions, she let people assume she had none. And that's the dangerous part, because her silence was her greatest weapon. She let others fill in the blanks with hope. She allowed them to misread her softness as sincerity. And while they believed she was a blessing, she was quietly collecting every detail, every secret, every emotional map, turning them into tools of control. Not to harm physically, not to scare, but to shape outcomes exactly the way she wanted. And the person in front of her had no idea they were being slowly maneuvered like pieces on a board she built. And now comes the twist, the part that will shock anyone who hears it. The moment her plan began to unfold, everything started making sense in reverse. The coincidences weren't coincidences. The timing wasn't accidental. The emotional connection wasn't mutual, it was engineered. And when the truth finally surfaced, it felt like someone had ripped the curtain off a perfectly staged illusion. The person she targeted realized she had been anticipating their reactions long before they even spoke. She predicted their fears, their choices, their doubts. She made them believe she understood them, but she was only reflecting what she had learned in silence. And now, my beloved child, you must understand why this story matters. Because the title is not an exaggeration, this woman played a dark game. Not of danger, not of violence, but of emotional strategy. A game that teaches one of the biggest lessons of life. Not every kind face carries pure intentions, and not every warm presence is meant to stay. Some people arrive with a script already written, one you were never supposed to see. My beloved child, before you take another breath, understand this: the deeper we go, the more the pieces begin to fit together in a way that will leave you speechless. Because the moment her mask started slipping, something extraordinary happened. Not loud, not chaotic, but a quiet shift in the air that only the most observant could feel. She began revealing fragments of her real intentions without even realizing it. A sudden hesitation in her voice, a strange pause in her reactions, a moment where her empathy felt rehearsed instead of real. And the one she targeted, finally sensed that something was off. Not enough to accuse her, but enough to make them question why her presence felt perfectly timed, almost too perfect. It's like she had been preparing responses long before conversations happened. And that's when the truth started showing itself, because people who play dark emotional games eventually slip when the script they memorized no longer works in real time. You could see it in her eyes. She wasn't responding, she was calculating. She wasn't listening, she was adjusting. And at that point, the game she controlled so well began to turn against her. But here is where things take a turn so dramatic, it feels like a once-in-a-lifetime plot twist. The person she targeted didn't react with anger or fear, they simply stepped back and watched. For the first time, the roles reversed. The woman who built her entire strategy on watching others, was now being observed. Every micro-reaction she tried to hide became noticeable. Every false concern she expressed sounded hollow. Every attempt to appear caring suddenly felt overdone. It was like someone dimmed the illusion spotlight and turned on a harsh, revealing light. She thought she still held control, but she didn't realize that the person in front of her had quietly awakened to the truth. And with that awakening came clarity. Clarity that shattered the emotional maze she spent so long constructing. Because no matter how carefully someone plays a dark emotional game, the moment authenticity enters the room, manipulation loses its power. And that's exactly what happened. Her moves no longer landed. Her words no longer influenced. Her presence no longer felt mysterious. It felt exposed. My beloved child, pause here and feel the weight of this moment, because this is the turning point where the story grips every viewer and refuses to let them scroll away. If you're listening right now, you're meant to stay. If you're here, there's a reason your path crossed this message. And if this story resonates with even a small corner of your heart, you know someone out there once played a silent game with your emotions too. So hold on, stay with me, and keep your eyes open, because what's coming next is where everything flips, and the revelations will only grow sharper, deeper, and more unbelievable from here. If you wish to express your support further, you have the option to give super thanks, with contributions of up to $20. My beloved child. Now we enter the part of the story where everything becomes sharper, clearer, and far more unsettling than before. Because once her illusion broke, even slightly, something unexpected awakened inside the person she targeted. A quiet strength. A new awareness. A sudden clarity that made every past moment replay with a different meaning. They remembered her timing, her sudden appearances, the way she always knew exactly what to say, as if she rehearsed empathy instead of feeling it. And with this clarity came the realization that she wasn't unpredictable, she was consistent in all the wrong ways. Her kindness always came when she needed information. Her support appeared when she wanted influence. Her concern surfaced right when she feared losing control. The pattern became undeniable, and once they saw it, they couldn't unsee it. It's like discovering that a beautiful painting was actually a disguise hiding a completely different sketch underneath. And for the first time, the person she targeted stepped out of the emotional fog she created, and she could feel it. She could sense the shift. And that terrified her more than anything else. Because here's the twist that nobody expects: she didn't want to lose her power. She didn't want her game to end. She wasn't emotionally invested, she was strategically invested. She needed her role in their life, not because she cared, but because being needed gave her a purpose she built from shadows. And when she saw that the person she targeted wasn't reacting the way she predicted, her entire system began to shake. She tried to become softer, then stronger, then distant, then suddenly close again. She switched roles rapidly, hoping one of them would regain the emotional control she was losing. But every move she made only exposed her more. It was like watching someone juggle a script that kept slipping out of their hands. One moment she acted like a victim, the next moment like a guardian, and then suddenly like a misunderstood soul. But none of it worked this time, because once you notice someone's patterns, even their best performance feels artificial. And she realized she was losing, not because her game was weak, but because the person in front of her finally chose self-respect over confusion. My beloved child. This is where the story becomes magnetic, the kind of moment that grabs every viewer by the heart and refuses to let go. Because the most powerful plot twist wasn't her deception, it was their awakening. They didn't fight her. They didn't expose her. They didn't argue. They simply stopped feeding the game. And that silence, that peaceful withdrawal, was something she was never ready for. People who play emotional games expect reactions, not clarity. They expect attachment, not distance. They expect confusion, not confidence. And when she realized that the person she tried to control was now quietly stepping out of her maze, she felt something she had never expected: the collapse of her own power. And that, my beloved child, is where the story shifts into the part that will shock you even more, because what she does next will reveal the truth she tried to hide all along. My beloved child, as we step deeper into this unraveling truth, understand something powerful. When her control began slipping, she didn't react with silence, she reacted with desperation wrapped in sweetness. She tried to recreate the illusion she once mastered so effortlessly. Suddenly, she became overly gentle, overly attentive, overly emotional, as if she was trying to paint herself back into the role she believed she owned. But the strange part was this: the more she tried to appear genuine, the more artificial she became. Every smile felt like it was stitched together. Every comforting word felt like an echo of a line she used before. And the one she targeted saw all of it, every slip, every repetition, every forced expression. It was like watching a magician repeat a trick after the audience already knows the secret. There was no mystery left. No depth. No power. And that terrified her more than anything, because manipulation only works when the other person is unaware. But awareness? Awareness destroys the entire strategy. This is the moment, my beloved child, where the story becomes chillingly revealing. She didn't want them to pull away, not because she cared, but because she needed the attachment to feel significant. She needed the emotional weight of being necessary. And when she sensed that this connection was dissolving, she switched her strategy. Instead of appearing powerful, she suddenly acted vulnerable. Instead of controlling, she acted afraid. Instead of confidence, she showed confusion. Hoping that the sudden softness would pull them back emotionally. But this time, there was a stillness in the air. They weren't reacting. They weren't falling for the sudden shift. For once, they were watching without being pulled. And that's when she felt her influence slipping through her fingers like sand she could no longer hold. She tried one more move, something subtle. She reminded them of past moments. She used emotional callbacks. She replayed memories in a way that made them question if stepping away was the right thing. But clarity, once awakened, doesn't dim so easily. And the person she targeted stood firm, seeing through every attempt to pull them back into the maze. My beloved child, let this moment sit with you, because the truth is rarely spoken. Sometimes the person who played the darkest game wasn't the loudest, wasn't the scariest, wasn't the cruelest, they were simply the most calculated. And this is where every viewer watching feels that internal pull to stay, to watch closely, to not look away. Because whenever a mask breaks, the real story begins. And as this truth unfolds, remember this, moments like these reveal who someone truly is, not through their confidence, but through their panic when their influence fades. And if you're still here right now, it means this story has touched a part of your life too. Hold on, because the next part will uncover the part of her plan she never wanted anyone to discover. My beloved child, now we enter the part of the story that exposes the truth she tried hardest to bury. Because when someone who thrives on silent control feels their grip breaking, they don't just panic, something inside them cracks. And that crack reveals everything. For the first time, her carefully maintained calm began to slip. You could see it in the way she spoke. Not steady, not balanced, but trembling with the fear of losing what she once controlled effortlessly. She started recalling old conversations, hinting at old kindness, replaying moments where she appeared caring, as if dragging the past back into the present could save her. But something extraordinary had already happened. Her influence had lost its power. The person she targeted no longer felt the emotional pull she used to rely on. That invisible thread she once held? It was no longer connected to anything. And she realized that she wasn't just losing the game, she was losing her identity, because her role in someone else's life had become the foundation of her self-worth. But here comes the revelation that hits harder than anything before. The truth behind her dark game wasn't rooted in cruelty, it was rooted in emptiness. She played the game because she feared being overlooked. She manipulated because she feared being ordinary. She observed silently because she was terrified that if she spoke her real feelings, she would be dismissed. Every calculated move wasn't just strategy, it was survival. But survival built on manipulation eventually collapses. And when her facade cracked, what came out wasn't anger, it was desperation. She wanted to hold on to the person she studied so deeply because she believed they were the only anchor she had. And when that anchor began to drift away, her entire identity felt like it was dissolving. That's why she doubled down on the illusion. That's why she tried to recreate emotions she didn't genuinely feel. That's why she tried to weave herself back into their life with rushed softness and forced vulnerability. But emotion born from fear can never defeat clarity born from truth. My beloved child, feel the weight of this moment, because this is where the story transforms from exposure into understanding. Every viewer listening right now can feel that sharp twist of recognition, because many have met someone who played the same silent game, someone who hid their intentions behind warmth, someone who acted like a protector but was secretly building a role in their life they never earned honestly. And here is the turning point: the person she targeted didn't step away with anger. They stepped away with peace. They didn't confront her, they simply stopped responding to the performance. And that silence was louder than any accusation could ever be. It was the moment her entire strategy dissolved. Because a dark emotional game only thrives when someone participates, and the moment they walked away from the script, the game stopped existing. But her story isn't over yet. There is one final part of her plan, the part she never expected to be revealed. And what comes next will rewrite everything you think you know about this woman and her intentions. My beloved child, now we reach the part of the story where everything turns upside down, where the truth she hid the longest finally rises to the surface. Because once her attempts failed, once every emotional performance fell flat, she realized something she had spent years avoiding: the person she targeted had seen her fully. Not the version she crafted, not the script she rehearsed, but the real her, the one she kept buried under layers of charm, gentleness, and strategic affection. And that terrified her more than losing control. Because when someone sees the truth behind the illusion, they no longer fear you, no longer chase you, no longer feel bound to the story you created. They see you as human. And that, for someone who survives on mystery, is the most painful exposure of all. But here's where the story becomes shockingly unpredictable, because beneath all her manipulation, beneath all her strategies, she had been hiding something even she didn't fully understand. She had built this dark emotional game not to deceive, but to protect herself from a truth that scared her more than loneliness ever could. The truth was this: she genuinely cared for the person she targeted. Not at first, not when she entered their life like a perfectly timed coincidence. But slowly, unknowingly, unwillingly. While she studied their emotions, she accidentally grew attached. While she controlled their reactions, she quietly became dependent. While she engineered moments, she started craving the real ones. And by the time she realized it, she was already too deep in the persona she created. She couldn't step out of the game because she didn't know how to be vulnerable without controlling the outcome. She didn't know how to be honest without feeling powerless. She believed that if she revealed her true intentions, if she showed genuine affection, she would lose them. But ironically, it was the game itself that pushed them away. My beloved child, this is the moment where every viewer feels the emotional punch, because the truth is painfully simple: she wasn't a villain, she was broken. She wasn't heartless, she was terrified. She wasn't evil, she was emotionally unequipped. She played a dark game because she didn't know another way to keep someone close. And when the person she targeted stepped away, not with anger but with calm understanding, it shattered her carefully built world. For the first time, she saw herself through someone else's clarity, not as a mastermind, not as a strategist, but as someone who hid behind manipulation because honesty felt too vulnerable. And that realization hit her harder than exposure, harder than rejection. Because she finally understood that if she had just been real, she might have been loved without playing any game at all. But, my beloved child, the story is not finished. Not yet. Because what she does after this breaking point, after losing control, after realizing the truth, after facing herself, will determine whether her story ends in regret or transformation. And what's coming next will reveal the final chapter of her hidden intentions. My beloved child. Now we step into the final layer of her truth, the part of the story that reveals who she becomes after everything collapses. Because when a person loses the game they were never supposed to play, they are forced to face the version of themselves they spent years avoiding. And that's exactly what happened to her. The silence she once used as a weapon now echoed back at her, showing her the emptiness of her own patterns. She replayed every moment. The subtle lies, the crafted emotions, the carefully timed gestures, and for the first time, she felt the weight of what she had done. Not out of guilt alone, but out of the painful understanding that she had pushed away the one person who might have accepted her without the mask. And as she sat with this truth, a quiet realization dawned: she didn't lose control, she lost connection. And that is a loss far deeper, far heavier, far more life-changing than any game she ever played. What makes this moment truly breathtaking is the transformation it sparked inside her. Because people don't change when they win, people change when the truth breaks them open. She began seeing herself clearly, without ego, without the story she created, without the illusion she tried to maintain. She saw the fear underneath her manipulation, the insecurity behind her silence, the longing behind her strategy. And instead of running from it the way she always had, she did something she had never done before: she faced it. She sat with the version of herself she had always tried to hide. She realized that the game she played wasn't meant to hurt others, it was meant to protect the fragile parts of her that she never allowed anyone to see. And in that moment of painful clarity, she understood that she had been living in a self-made maze, not to trap someone else, but to keep herself from being seen too clearly. My beloved child. This is where the story reaches its most powerful truth. When the person she targeted walked away, they didn't leave her broken, they left her awakened. Their silence didn't destroy her, it revealed her. Their distance didn't reject her, it freed her from the performance she was trapped in. And for the first time, she understood that real connection doesn't need a game, doesn't need strategy, doesn't need emotional control. It needs honesty, vulnerability, presence. She learned that love without manipulation is terrifying, but it may be the only love that truly heals. And so, the woman who once played a dark game made a choice she had never made before: she decided to grow. To rebuild herself without masks. To approach life without scripts. To let relationships unfold naturally instead of shaping them from the shadows. Because the ending of her game wasn't the end of her story, it was the beginning of her becoming. And what happens next is no longer a dark game, but a journey toward a version of herself she never believed she could be. My beloved child, now we step into the aftermath, the quiet space where her transformation begins to take shape in ways no one expected, not even her. Because when someone who once moved like a strategist learns to stand without a script, the world looks different. Softer. Sharper. More real. She woke up one morning and felt something unusual: the absence of calculation. No rehearsed expressions. No planned responses. No silent studying of someone else's emotions. It was the first time in years she wasn't preparing for a moment, she was simply living in it. And that unfamiliar peace felt both terrifying and liberating. She realized she had spent so long building emotional armor that she forgot what it felt like to breathe without fear. And in this new stillness, she saw her own reflection clearly. Not the version she used to present, but the version that had been quietly waiting beneath all her layers. A version that wanted love, not control. A version that wanted connection, not leverage. A version that wanted to feel something real, even if it scared her. But here's the breathtaking part, my beloved child. As she began healing from her own patterns, something unexpected happened. She started noticing small things she once overlooked. The way sunlight warmed her room in the morning, the way simple conversations felt lighter when they weren't motivated by strategy, the way her heart felt when it wasn't performing. She found herself drawn to honesty, not because it was easy but because it finally felt safe. She realized that the person she once tried to control had unknowingly given her the greatest gift, a mirror. A mirror that revealed who she had been, and who she could become. And with every passing day, she stepped a little farther away from the shadows she once relied on. She began embracing vulnerability, not as a weakness, but as the only path to genuine connection. She practiced speaking without shaping her words around outcomes. She allowed herself to express emotions without calculating reactions. And slowly, the woman who once played a dark game was becoming someone capable of something she had never truly allowed herself to feel, authentic love. My beloved child, this is where the story finds its purpose. Because her journey doesn't end with manipulation exposed or a game defeated, it ends with a heart awakened. She learned that control can create attachment, but only honesty can create connection. She learned that playing a role may keep someone near, but it will never let them close. And in the quiet transformation that followed, she discovered that the real victory wasn't in keeping someone, but in becoming someone worthy of being kept. And as she stepped into this new chapter, she carried one powerful lesson with her. The person she targeted didn't walk away to punish her, they walked away to show her what she needed to see. And that clarity became the beginning of her rebirth.